What is up, everybody, and welcome to a weekend edition of the All NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. Coming to you on the weekend, as I always do, with the star of the show today, Marc Stein, joining us from DLLS Mavs, as well as his fantastic Substack, the Stein Line. Marc, how you doing today?
My friend, I am good. Always good to be with you.
Well, there's a lot going on in the NBA. This is the time of year where the NBA schedules all these marquee games, and we've had a bunch of them. We're going to go over a handful of topics, including Devin Booker's commitment to the Suns, their commitment to him. I know that's been a big talking point. Daryl Morey had an interesting confession, if you will, about the Sixers' use of AI to make decisions. That basically has a person in their front office. And we're going to give some shout outs to people that maybe are a little under the radar. No, Marc has one. I've got one that will not surprise anybody. So we're going to do that. But we're going to start by, we talked about some marquee games. We saw the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics go head-to-head earlier this week. When you watch two of the best teams play each other, you're reminded of the levels there are to basketball. Because sometimes we'll see the Cavs beat up on a lesser team, and you're like, okay, what are they? But when two teams square off, the level of play elevates. And I kind of feel like that's what I saw in that game. So before we even get to our topic, I'm just curious what you thought. And if you agree with me, when the marquee teams match up, it becomes more aware that both of them are ahead of the field when you see the level they have to go to.
I think it's also one of the factors here that Boston's done it now. So we look at the
Yep.
Celtics differently than we did a year ago. Cleveland and Oklahoma City, they're still in the prove it to us stage, even though their
Totally.
regular season resumes are as good as they can be. So when Oklahoma City plays as well as it does and beats Boston, and it really does, some people will say, wow, this is eye opening. We got to take the Thunder more seriously than we have. And then some people inevitably will say, no, not the playoffs. It's a regular season one off. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
So, look, the Cavs and the Thunder have to deal with that noise. There's no way around it. There's only one way to hush it, as the Celtics finally found out last season. But look, I think if you love basketball and you see what the Thunder are doing, they have to impress you. I mean,
Yep.
statistically, they're bidding for the most dominant regular season ever. If you look at point differential, they're trying to beat the record set by the 71-72 Lakers, which was a team that had a 33-game winning streak and was as good a team as we've ever seen in any single season. So it really depends on your matter of perspective. But from where I sit, and instinct tells me you're in agreement on this, it's hard not to be impressed by the Thunder. They've been as good as you can be in the regular season, and that still should be worth something.
Well, the Denver Nuggets took care of them in Oklahoma City, and all it took was the best three-point shooting game in franchise over the last 40 years. That's all it took. You just have to make more threes at a better rate than you have in 40 years. No, they're incredible. Plus 12.3 net rating. They can beat you in a whole host of ways, namely via Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and just an elite defense that runs 10 people deep. They can roll out 10 guys and not lose anything defensively. In fact, in some cases, you go to your bench and your defense actually elevates. That's just how insane this team is. So I think there's no question. But at the same time, I also understand. And look, I think fan bases, especially in this internet age where everybody can talk to everybody 24/7, fan bases have this sense of, well, if you're not buying my Thunder, then I can't believe it. I have this righteous indignation. I'll tell you this, man. The thing I've learned, Nuggets win a championship, still nobody believes in you. Like, you'll never get over that. I don't know what fans want sometimes, where everybody universally acknowledges that you will win a championship. You never get it. So just enjoy that righteous indignation you get. You're not going to get it from us, though, Marc, because you and I believe that Cleveland, Boston, and Oklahoma City are the only teams that deserve to be in tier one. But today we're talking about the rest. Who do you buy the most that is not those three teams? And this is what's fun about this year is you could take this 10 different directions. So where do you take it if we put those three in one box? Who's the best of the rest?
I'm going with the teams that have the guys who have done it before. So Denver, for all the questions we can legitimately raise
It's a
about the
lot.
Nuggets' depth and about the Nuggets' perimeter shooting, Jokic is playing the best basketball of his life. For me, he is still the MVP. I know it's going to be a very close race, and maybe SGA actually wins that race at the end. But I think the Nuggets have to be on that list because of Jokic and the heights that the Nuggets can still hit when they're at their best. The Warriors, they are super small,
They look
but they
great.
have a whole new look with Jimmy Butler, who Jimmy Butler, especially with Jimmy Butler, to me, when the playoffs are here, is an unquestioned top 10 player in the league when the playoffs show up.
Top
And
10.
I think you put him with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. Maybe they're too small to win. I don't think anybody is going to love playing the Warriors. Even the Bucks, I still give the puncher's chance because Giannis is so great. I was just in Milwaukee and the Lakers were super shorthanded, so I really don't want to focus on that game at all. It's not really about that game, but I think Kuzma was a great trade deadline acquisition. The Bucks are a more well-rounded team now than they were 6-8 weeks ago. I still think with Giannis and Dame and Kuzma and where they've been in the past, you have to keep them. Let's call this the puncher's chance list. And
Yeah.
honestly, I have the Lakers there too,
Yeah.
because I think, again, super small. I mean, the Lakers are small in terms of they don't have a really top level center, but their small team is big, if that makes sense. Like Luka is big for his position. LeBron
Sure.
plays larger than he is. Rui Hachimura, when he's on the floor, has a presence. Like they're small, but not small. And I
Yeah.
think Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves as three playmakers can cause teams problems. So those four teams are on my puncher's chance list. And they all have guys who have basically done it at the highest level. Nuggets, Bucks, Warriors, Lakers. I think we all have to give them a puncher's chance.
In an ironic way, I almost feel like Denver is the opposite of what we were talking about with the Boston Celtics. Well, they've been there before, so or I'm sorry, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they haven't been there. Therefore, we have a doubt. Denver, they have 2 or 3 impressive wins on their slate. But other than that, they haven't shown a lot. We just know they have been there before and they have Jokic. So that elevates them past the floor to where we give them this. And look, I agree with you. I think Denver's ceiling, which again, sometimes you just judge this off of ceiling. Their ceiling is right up there with the best in the league. It's just that we see it less than we do any of the other teams on the list. But Lakers, I agree with you. I think that one's for sure. Milwaukee makes sense to me, and they've really figured some things out with Dame and Giannis playing more minutes together. The bench they have carrying them through some of these non-star minutes have been really impressive. But I'm more interested in a team you didn't mention, not the Knicks, not the Pacers, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, to me, on a 6-game winning streak, did not make your list. And I watch them and I go, elite defense. We know they can do that. Superstar and Anthony Edwards. And it's starting to come together for them in the Julius Randle piece. And when I watch them play, they have some wins this year that are dominant against good teams, most recently Denver on Wednesday. So why didn't they crack your puncher's chance list? I feel like they have a chance of upsetting these teams in the West as well.
Maybe, and you're right, it is, maybe it's a mistake on my part to leave them out because what did they won 11 in a row with Julius Randle? And, you said it. I think it's perceived that the Wolves took a step back
Yeah,
when they traded away Karl Anthony Towns right before the season started. But, you bring up a great point. They've maintained a top 10 defense all season long. And we know the Nuggets don't like seeing the Wolves. I mean, Minnesota beats Denver
for
all
sure.
the time.
Yeah.
And so if that's a matchup we get in the playoffs, I mean, you could make the case that the Wolves should be favored based on recent history between these teams. But I guess when I when I made my list, I really gravitated to, these stars on all these teams who we know have gone deep, deep, deep into the playoffs. And look, Anthony Edwards did get to the conference finals last year.
Sure.
And that Minnesota Denver series last year was an all timer. I mean, that was one of the all time roller coaster series. That was a circus. So, I probably should be giving them more credit. Just holding leads has been an issue for that team.
Yeah.
And I just, again, I could be proven wrong. Maybe
No.
Minnesota should be higher on that list of puncher's chance teams than I put them. I
Well,
will
they
take
all
your I will take your read under advisement.
there you go. Well, they are a 7 seed. The strongest counter is just they're a 7 seed. They're not even in the playoffs. They're in the play-in. So they're going to have to figure that out first. But when I look at the West, I mean, to your point, Denver wants no part of Minnesota. Minnesota has made not just wins, blowout statement wins over them over and over again, and carries themselves in those matchups now like a team that knows they have the number, which to me is even more telling. So Denver, we know, is a bad matchup. And I just look at them and I go, they have the defense to make it hard for anybody. Do they have the offense? Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle starting to put it together. So I just buy them. Minnesota to me is absolutely in the same tier as a Denver, a Los Angeles, and a Golden State. And Golden State, by the way, is such an interesting story. I mean, I think we did this last week. We talked about how long can this run go? Well, it's still going. And they do have a murderer's row coming up. I don't know if you've looked at their schedule coming up, but they do have Indiana, Oklahoma City. I'm sorry, that's not their right. No, they don't have a tough lineup coming up. I'm sorry, I was looking at the Lakers schedule, or I believe, or maybe that was the Bucks schedule coming up. Their schedule is not necessarily tough. So I look at Golden State and I go, you mentioned it. They look like the team that won all these championships. They pass the ball incredibly well. Number 1 in passes per possession in the NBA since the Jimmy Butler trade. They guard with versatility. All those guys fly around. They get deflections. They're first in both offensive and defensive loose balls recovered. Not a surprise if you watch them play. Those were all things that the old Warriors did. So I'm watching them, Mark, and I don't know what you think or what people around the league are saying, but I watch them and I go, that looks like the Warriors we know.
Well, it's funny. Steve Kerr has made the comparison, and he says this is not an exact comparison, but a lot of the things that Andre Iguodala brought to the Warriors at their dynastic best,
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler has a similar effect. But I mean,
Hmm.
Jimmy Butler is still a really, really, really good player. And people probably are focused too much on all the drama and histrionics that went into a very protracted, weeks long process for him to extricate himself from the Heat. But uh, as we're taping this, what are the Warriors, 13-1 with Jimmy in the lineup? I mean, that's not a super huge sample, but it ain't a small sample either. I mean, 13-1 is 13-1.
Yeah.
And he is a winning player. And these last 5-6 years, I've become a huge fan of what he does. And, we're seeing, we've talked about this on this show before. It's very rare in modern NBA history to make a trade at the deadline that immediately leads to a championship. It's really only happened 3 times in my 30 plus years covering the league. Clyde Drexler in 95 to the Rockets when they were already defending champions. Rasheed Wallace to the Pistons in 04. Marc Gasol to the Raptors. And that was the Raptors team that first acquired Kawhi Leonard going into that season. So it's not often that an in-season trade immediately leads to a championship. And again, the gauntlet in the West just might be too tough for Golden State to overcome with a team that, again, does not have size. And at some point, you're going to need size, But again, I don't think anybody wants to see Golden State right now. I
I
really
know.
believe that. Like, who wants to play those guys? They are tough. They will not be fun to deal with, especially when Steph Curry's playing the way he is as well.
Yeah, and another tent pole of the old Warriors, they get these 20-point leads because they have haymakers that they can happen in the first, the second, the third, the fourth. At any moment, they can hit you with a haymaker. This Warriors team is doing the same thing. You blink, they go on a run, you blink and check the score, and all of a sudden it's 25 points. They're doing that a lot right now, so I'm with you on them. You didn't mention the Pacers as well, and I think that one I understand more. But the Pacers do play the Bucks on Saturday, and a week after that incredible Halliburton shot, and I I talked to a lot of people, ask them, who do you believe in? Who's the puncher's chance teams? Everybody says Milwaukee. And I look at that and I go, if I was Indiana, I'd be looking at Saturday's game saying, let's knock the Bucks out of that puncher's chance. We have the puncher's chance, not them. And that sets the stage for what I think will be a great game. Any quick Indiana thoughts?
No, I think you're right. I think they could easily be on the list. They haven't been quite as consistent as we saw last season, but they are
Yeah.
a team that they have a style. They know exactly what they want to do. And again, a team that nobody likes seeing because of the pace that they can ratchet up to when they're at their best. I think Siakam has quietly just had a tremendous season, getting no love. And, Nebhard has proved to be a really good complement to bring the
He's so
best
good.
out of Tyrese Halliburton. So, I mean, this is actually good news. I think that we can, I named 4 teams, you named 2 more. I mean, I think, you'd rather see it this way. Like, I don't think we want to go to the playoffs thinking, okay, one of these 3 teams is going to win it and it's decided and we know. I mean, it will be nice if we're proven right and the playoffs are competitive, because remember there was so much of last spring's playoffs that was so snoozy and so uncompetitive. So it would be nice. It would be nice if we are correct here that some of these teams can cause trouble.
I think we're getting it no matter what. There's going to be a good 4-5 matchup. Bucks Pacers almost certainly going to be that one of those first round matchups. Might get Lakers Warriors in the first round, by the way. Think about the ratings for that first round series. Lakers versus
And
Warriors would be incredible.
the Bucks and the Pacers also, we know they don't like each other. That always
They hate
helps.
each other.
Those teams do not like each other, and that certainly makes that can
Yeah.
only help a playoff series.
And by the way, you might get Denver, Minnesota. I'm not rooting for it because you're 100% right that Minnesota owns it. But another group of teams that don't like each other, have a rivalry, have played in the playoffs the last 2 years. Maybe we make it a trilogy, and there's a lot of intrigue around that first round. Let me tell you guys about Fitbod. There are plenty of influencers that are trying to sell you less, but charge you more. Fitbod combines the workout planning and tracking you need to stay consistent and make progress. I know you guys are like me. It's starting to warm up. Summer is on the way. That means the beach, the pool. You got to get ready. You got to get that beach bod going. Well, how do you do it? Fitbod is a fitness app that acts as your personal trainer, and it's actually incredibly intuitive and really helpful. I know a lot of these apps, they sound like a good idea. You download them. It's just too cumbersome. Not this one. There's an onboarding process where you're going to fill out the information like height, weight, what your goals are, how frequently you can work out, what equipment's available to you. And then it's going to give you a plan that you can trust is going to get you where you want to go if you stay consistent. And it's going to help you stay consistent with push notifications, scheduling. And also it has these workouts that help you track what you're doing. So you put in how much you lifted on Monday. Come Wednesday, it's going to tell you so you can up your weight or you can up your routine, and you can track yourself over several weeks. They have all these new workouts. Some of them, even if you've been working out for a long time, like I'm a guy that goes to the gym. I put my workout in there, and every now and then it gives me something where I'm like, I've never seen this one before. And it gives you this great 3D model that shows you how to do it. And if your workout circumstances change, maybe you have to do a shorter workout today, but you don't want to sacrifice. You put in, I need a 30-minute workout, not a 60-minute one, or a 15-minute workout, not a 30-minute one. It'll give you something that makes sure you're maximizing your time. So level up your workout. Join Fitbod today to get your personalized workout plan. Get 25% off your subscription or try for free for 7 days at fitbod.me/allnba. It's also in the description of the show, but just in case you're listening, not watching, fitbod.me/allnba. Also want to tell you guys about FanDuel, the presenting sponsor of this show. It's bracket season. Next week, one of the best weeks in the year. I think it's number 2 behind the Super Bowl and the best betting event of the entire year. FanDuel is letting you make the call because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you have your first $5 bet win. That's $200 extra bucks to bet on everything from clutch shots to last second heartbreaks and even who's cutting down the nets. I know every year over at DNVR, we have somebody that only picks all of the first round games, all 32 of them, just takes the underdog, bets the money line underdog, and they make money every single year. But it's fun. The tournament is fun. You don't know who these teams are. Maybe you did 10 minutes of research, but it's fun to have just a little bit of skin in the game for each game so you know what you're rooting for. So right now you can visit FanDuel.com/allNBA and get in on the college hoops action all tourney long. Must be 21 or older and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's move on now, because there's been a lot of talk about the Suns and what they're going to do this offseason, some of the moves they're going to make. And, I personally, I'm one of those guys that when I look at their roster, I think, where is it going? Are you going to be able to make a moves this summer and contend? I would say no. But Matt Ishbia doesn't seem like a guy that wants to do a slow rebuild. He does not want to do a process style rebuild. And so that leaves the question of their commitment to Devin Booker. I'm curious what you believe Devin Booker's devotion is to the Suns and what you believe the Suns' devotion is to him long-term with their organization.
Well, I have to hand it to my guy, Tim McMahon, my neighbor here in Dallas. He went out there to Phoenix and did a tremendous piece on the Suns and, got very extensive on the record comments from Matt Ishbia and Booker himself. And look, Devin Booker wants to be a one-team guy. I think it's too early in his career to definitively say that's the way it's going to turn out. But I think you know me well enough by now to know I am a basketball romantic. And if if a star player wants to be with one team for his whole career, I will always applaud it.
Yeah.
I am a sucker for that. I love that. And I have to imagine Suns fans, amid just a brutal season where they haven't come close to expectations, I have to believe that Suns fans love hearing that. But the reality, as Tim laid out in the piece, and, Ishbia, you got to give him, like, he takes a lot of punches and a lot of hits, but you have to say when he does speak, he's pretty open and transparent about what he wants to do. Now, his famous comment at the end of last season about how 26 of 29 GMs would trade their rosters for Phoenix's right now, I
Yeah.
think we can safely say that did not turn out to be a statement that aged well, as the kids like to say, because I don't think 26 teams would be lining up to trade for the Sun situation right now. But one thing Ishbia did say that I think you do have to agree with, as a front office, he's going to give you every opportunity and spend to the absolute limits that he can to try to give his team a chance to win. So from that perspective, as a Suns fan, I think you have to like hearing that. But look, the reality is Houston has tried many times to engage the Suns on Devin Booker discussions. It's gone nowhere, but the Rockets hold so much of Phoenix's draft capital. I would imagine the Rockets will keep testing that resolve to see how firmly the Suns hold to that position. But Matt Ishbia is saying they will hold to that position. Matt Ishbia is saying we're not trading Devin Booker. He said it will never happen. So that's this year's quote that you need to file away, and let's see if that sticks.
Yeah.
And if the Suns are serious and if they are
Yeah.
never going to entertain Devin Booker trade offers, you know, the phone's going to ring for Kevin Durant again this offseason. And I imagine this time the Suns will work much closer with Kevin Durant's camp if he is indeed going to be traded this offseason. I don't think there's any question the Suns are going to look different next season than they do right now. That
Yeah.
they cannot bring back the same group, because I mean they are like Dallas. The number 10 seed is there for the taking in the West. I don't think the Suns can take it. I mean,
I
they're
know.
just not playing well enough and don't have enough time even to make up, you know, a sub 3-game deficit. So I mean, keep your eye on the Suns.
Yeah.
They remain fascinating because Ishbia, everything he says, every quote he gives, again, it gets you talking, and so few owners out there do speak that, you know, I certainly love to see that he's willing to talk about so many of these things. But yeah, we do
Yeah.
keep your radar on the Suns at all times.
Yeah, I too am a romantic about those things. I like when there's a player that really connects with the city, and I think Devin Booker has connected with Phoenix like quite a bit. And I like when those guys stay through thick or thin. You know, we all know the Dirk arc, which is one of the best arcs in sports, battling all the way, coming up short and still battling dark times, overcoming it, and then winning towards the end of the career. Like, you love that story, even if you're not a fan. So for me, Devin Booker, he is Phoenix in this era, and I would hate for it to be like he's right in his prime now. And on top of that, in the modern NBA, teams are rising and falling. You never know. I don't know if they're going to win it this summer. You know, this summer make some moves and win it next year. I'd be surprised with that. But who knows what the near future holds. Teams can rebound quicker than you can predict. I want to go to a fun story here. At the Sloan Conference a week ago, or perhaps 2 weeks ago, Daryl Morey talked about how the Sixers consult AI when making decisions about the draft or free agency or moves that they make to their roster. He consults AI. And I think this was one of those perfect stories, Mark, where it became a conversation, not because people cared so much, but because it was just so funny. It's a funny story, so everyone's going to have a take on it. But it did create a controversy, if you want to call it that, about the idea that AI is now infiltrating front offices and in part of the decisions. What did you make of this story, and what angles do you kind of take when you look at it?
Well, the first thing it means that my wife and son, who are constantly badgering me about my resistance to AI, they loved it because I am so slow to adopt. Like, I just want no part of AI. And they were like, see. But look, I think first some
Well, no, hold up,
context is
hold up.
important.
First of all, count this one in your column, not theirs. You could say, well, yeah, the 76ers did it. Is that the season exactly you want to claim victory because the 76ers in this year made that decision?
Well, look, first of all, we need to add some context to this because what Daryl Morey actually said, it was a live
Of course.
edition of Pablo Torre's excellent podcast done at the Sloan Conference. They consult
Yeah,
models, and
yeah,
team models. All teams covet having good
totally.
predictive models. Where I live in Dallas, why did Haralabos Vulgaris become such a huge part of the Dallas Mavericks front office for you know nearly a decade? Because his predictive models were so good. Mark Cuban was like, we have to have these as part of the organization. So look, the aggregation, the way that the conversation was portrayed, I think even the the way that the Pablo Torre podcast summed it up was like, Sixers use AI. And it's like, it's not really that. Daryl Morey is not asking Chat GPT, hey, should we sign Paul George? I mean, that's not what's happening. I
Yeah.
know we want to think that's what's happening here, but I would also tell you, I'm sure there's some Mavericks fans who wish that the Mavs asked Chat GPT, hey, should we trade Luka Doncic? I mean,
No.
maybe they should have taken that step. But
Yeah.
again, I don't think that that's exactly what's happening here. And
Right.
again, I think all teams in truth love trying to find predictive models that can help them. And to me, I mean, you tell me your reaction, then I've gone on long enough. You tell me what you think.
Well, my reaction to this was just that it's the perfect internet story. Context doesn't matter. It's a hilarious thing. AI is one of their front office guys. But yes, you're right that the modeling, that's been a big part of, analytics really broke onto the scene maybe 15 years ago. And it was this new thing. And some of the discoveries that were made were so rudimentary. And then you wonder, I almost feel like there's been this explosion in the use and advancement of analytics, but then almost a period where there hasn't been a lot. Like, okay, every team now understands the basics of how to use the information. The game's evolved, all these different things. But I do wonder about AI and the next wave of AI. So this is, maybe their models are a little more advanced and you can prompt it and it gives some insight into new things, not just player rankings and this or that, but maybe even some more stuff. But I do look at this and think 10 years from now, there might actually be a little bit more deeper levels to this. And that's what's interesting to me. The Sloan Conference has been around for a while, and they seem to say things 5 years before, you're like, oh yeah, that was actually very prescient. Everybody is going to have some type of influence in their front office from not just modeling, but actual AI.
Yeah, and like I said, I think, look, you said it. The context and nuance is going to be ignored like it is in so many
Yeah,
cases.
it's too
But
funny not to.
if you really listen to what Daryl Morey was talking about, he was talking about using models to help with draft picks, with pick and roll success. Again, like it just gets boiled down in the aggregation, and people are like, did the Sixers ask AI if Joel Embiid should play on his bad knee? Like, I mean, that's not
Yeah,
what's going
yeah,
on here. And, you know, obviously the AI part of it, it just leads to the even easier jokes about the only AI the Sixers should ever worry about is Allen Iverson. Like, it just, this one wrote itself. But I think all teams out there, in truth,
yeah,
as long as you use it as a tool, as long as you don't let it completely rule your decision making, like any team wants as many good tools as it can muster in making decisions. But again, I do not think the Sixers were like, and
yeah,
look, let's go back to the summer. If you had the cap space, who wouldn't have signed Paul George? I mean,
yeah,
it's turned out it has not worked out at all. And the Sixers are in, just a very hard to believe place. I mean, Sunday I'm covering the, Sixers Mavs, which was supposed to be an ABC game, and it's, just two presumed championship contenders going through basketball hell right now on a
yeah,
game that ABC has taken off the schedule. So I'm
right,
about to see this firsthand. But if we go back to July, let's be honest, all of us know-it-alls were saying the Sixers won the offseason.
right.
And we can pretend now like we, that
Well,
we're
we didn't know
smarter
Joel
and
Embiid
they
would not play. The Joel
say it
Embiid
again.
piece, I said we didn't know Joel Embiid was going to never play at half of his
Right.
potential, so that was a big factor. But sure,
So, I mean, that's the thing. You know, we can make jokes now and it's hilarious and whatever. But, again, I would like to think that we try to find the nuance. We try.
yeah. Well, here's a nuance for you, Mark, that I am curious because I thought about this years back. I'm making light of it, but I really am interested in these types of things. I remember when some of the early AIs were coming out, there was one that played the game Go, which is like a more complicated board game, more complicated than like chess. And the AIs learned by just playing against itself millions of times, right? Just quickly simulating games and developing its own strategy. And when it played against the best player in the world, it played a strategy nobody had ever seen before that at first felt like it was messing up. Like, why would anybody do this? But then, of course, it wins all these matches, and you think, oh my gosh, it's unlocking a new part of the game. I think with a lot of these they're just pattern recognition and modeling. I wonder if there are teams that are going to start simulating. Okay, we've got the Warriors coming up. Let's simulate 1,000 games playing drop coverage. Let's simulate 1,000 games doing this. Let's just simulate another 1,000 games playing randomly, and let's look at the outliers. What happened in the games where they won by 20 points? Like, I do wonder if these models get better at the complex things, not just players and the stats, but complex strategies. And if teams actually start using that to develop game plans, it's crazy to think. And I almost don't like it because at some point the game becomes solved and, too predictive. But I do look at that and think these models are getting better and better. And I think you can use them to create game plans and to experiment with different types of coverages and have examples, albeit artificial ones, that maybe inform your decisions.
Well, look, I am woefully ill-informed on this kind of stuff. I mean, this is by no
Yeah.
means an
The
area
science
of
fiction.
expertise of mine, but just common sense would tell you, you pick any five teams. If your team out of those five has someone who can create a better predictive model than the other four teams, I mean, that's a form of competitive advantage that any
Yep.
team would want. So, I mean, there is certainly value in this. I guess I've just been personally resistant because I've had so many people who study AI and love AI tell me, like, you should pour all your stories into it and see what it comes up with. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? The last thing I want is some like, thank God when there's if somebody says, hey, write an article like Marc Stein. It doesn't come
Yeah,
out how I would write it, but I'm sure we're getting closer to, a lot closer
yeah,
to that point. Then what do I do? Then I'm out of business. I don't want
I
that to
know.
happen.
Or you get to retire early because you got your
No,
AI. Mark Steinbot is
no,
doing all the heavy lifting
no.
for you.
I
I'm
do not.
joking.
It's fine. I do not want that.
Yeah, I'm teasing you, of course. Last thing we're going to do here, because we didn't get to it this week, is we're going to give our shout outs. I tasked Mark Stein with picking a shout out. This segment is, of course, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at fanduel.com/all-NBA. Mark, I'll go first this week because my shout out just so happens to be one of my guys. My guy, Quentin Grimes, this week. 29 points last game, 35 the game before, 25 the game before that. That follows a 30-point game and a 44-point game. Over his last 7 games, averaging 26. I'm not just trying to say this because obviously he came from down. I would never do this to just try to kick dirt on the Mavs fans after they're down. But Quentin Grimes goes to a tanking team in Philadelphia. And what do you know? He has 30-point per game potential. Never would have guessed it. Shout out to him. Yes, they came on 5 out of the 7 games were losses, but he's playing really well, and I think he's earning himself some money.
You are not going to make any friends in Dallas with that nomination. That is for sure. Why? Can you explain it? Why is Quentin Grimes one of your guys? I'm just curious. How did he become a Team Madez
Yeah.
selection?
He plays hard. He plays really, really hard. He just gives a lot of effort. I thought he was a much better shooter, like a guy that you could work into any system, like 3-and-D. He'll plug in there. And I just thought he had more upside. Like when I watch him play, especially in New York, where he's really put in a box by Coach Tibbs, I just thought, man, there's more to that guy than he is showing. And so I was betting on him to be better than what he was projected. And I hit on that one. I think I can cash that one in.
It's going to be a very interesting case for him when he hits restricted free agency, because when a big reason why the Mavericks made the trade was by getting Caleb Martin. First of all, you know, Quentin Grimes was not putting up 30-point games as a Maverick, so
No.
you have to give him a lot of credit for the offensive force he's become as a Sixer. But Dallas's thinking there was, it was a team that was very small on the wing. Caleb Martin, the minute he walked in the door in Dallas, should have been and is regarded as their best perimeter defender, a guy who's done it on the playoff stage. But also Caleb Martin signed to a contract that's sub 8 million a year. And I think that contract structure certainly appealed to the Mavericks, given the
Right.
other commitments they have on their roster with bringing in Anthony Davis now. They obviously have to re-sign Kyrie Irving. PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford are up for extensions. So I think they liked the cost certainty that Caleb Martin has provided. But it's going to be real interesting now to see Quentin Grimes after this just heater of a spring, what he can do in the summertime on the restricted free agent market, which is always tough. It just restricted free agency is just a tough game as it is. My nomination for a shout out is not going to be it's probably not going to be as eclectic, I guess I would say, as yours. Stephen Curry, Mr.
There you
Stephen
go.
Curry. We are
Yeah.
recording this on a Friday, which happens to be his 37th birthday. And
Oh wow.
I cannot fathom how the guy they used to call the baby-faced assassin
Yep.
is 37. But not only is Stephen Curry celebrating a birthday this week, he just drained his 4,000th three-pointer. And can he play 3 more years and get to 5,000? I'm not going to put it past him. That shot ain't going anywhere. He's always going to be able to shoot it. I could easily see him playing till he's 40. So let's see, can he make a run at 5,000? But something I would love to do, I don't know. I probably, maybe AI could help me with this. I would love to figure out how many of those 4,000 threes I've seen in person. I'm going to guess it's in the thousands. So
Really?
I've been pretty
In the
lucky.
thousands.
Yeah, because I spent 3 years with them, pretty much embedded with the first 3 years of their 5 straight trips to the finals. I mean, I was embedded with the Warriors for SportsCenter. So I mean, I was seeing
Yeah.
30 to 40 regular season games and all their playoff games. So I have seen many of Stephen Curry's career three-pointers. Someday maybe I will figure out exactly how many.
Do you have a favorite one? This was going around the other day when it happened. Do you have one that just stands out to you as the most memorable?
Well, it's funny. He talked about the one in New Orleans when he got knocked down. I was there for that one. The double bang in OKC. I was there
That one is
for
fun.
that one. But I was not there at Madison Square Garden. I later wrote a story about it for the New York Times. But I mean, that was the game that really put Stephen Curry on the map when he went for 54. And the Warriors were not yet a championship contender. And I just, not a specific three, but that performance. Like, it's just hard for me to look past that one because I think that was what really announced him to the world as, he was starting his trajectory towards the 4,000 3-point machine
Yeah.
that we see now. That's really when he became a phenomenon. That amazing game in MSG, which they lost, actually. People forget that they lost that one. But yeah, I've been incredibly fortunate. I have to. This is a great chance for me to just thank Stephen Curry because I've had some really. I'm not around the Warriors a ton like I used to be, but in those first few years of their 5 trips to the finals in a row, I mean, I had incredible access to stuff,
Yeah.
and he has always been really, really good to cover for someone who does what I do.
Well, he's maybe the most fun player of all time. Certainly of, I think, my generation, the post-Jordan generation. I think he's the most fun player just because when he's on fire, there's nothing like it. There's no player that is like it. For me personally, I think it was that Oklahoma City game just because that game was phenomenal. There were haymaker after haymaker. And that shot, I mean, at that time, the idea of a 50-foot pull-up, like you had meant to take a 50-footer or however long it was still absurd. It's a little more common now. But I just remember that shot, and like I think every shot he took from that point on, I was like, that's going in. There's nowhere on the court that is too far away for him to just pull up from. So that one does it for me. Let us know in the comments, by the way. I'm curious what everybody's favorite Steph Curry 3 is. You can even link to it if you have the clip. And maybe try to find some, under the radar. There's 5 or 6 of his that I think everybody kind of points to, but maybe you have one that's a little under the radar that's your favorite. Let us know that in the comments below. Mark, thanks so much for stopping by, man. It was a great show.
Sounds good, my friend. We will do it again soon.
We'll do it again next week. Everybody hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.